Hello and welcome. My name is Mildred. I'm going to go straight into reading what assignment 12 is asking, and then we are going to try to build the framework for it. Now, before you start this video, I suggest you watch the assignment 9 walkthrough because it is similar, setting the layout. The layout we are using here is the grid view layout. You can use any layout of your choice, but I prefer using the grid view layout. So we are talking about building a case reporting system where we have forms that collect information. So the question reads, there has been a call for data collection around sexually transmitted diseases. Many nations struggle with decision making as the data available is either not informative enough or missing essential fields. So for this assignment and for the rest of the course, we will look at the CDC standard forms to create a data collection case reporting system for chlamydia and gonorrhea, for congenital syphilis and hepatitis B. And this is to make the front-end problem-specific design where we enforce rules on the form fields to ensure complete and accurate data collection. So for this assignment, your assignment page has 3 forms attached for you, and you have to draft the system framework and create the directory structures and make the forms. The workflow recommended is to have a login form on the index page. So your first requirement is to create an index page. The index page should be in the root directory. The index page should hold a login form. The second requirement is to have a registration form where each client or patient is registered, and this form is access controlled and should not be in the root directory. So we want this form to collect personal information like names. The names field should be optional. Unique identifier field should be required. The sex field should be required. The gender identity field should be required. The sexual orientation field should be required. And then the date of birth and only the year part of the date of birth should be required. So you design that form with these form fields and put the required and optional constraints. So for this, I expect you to use HTML required attributes on the required field. The login user should retrieve clients or patient's page. Now, because we are not doing the back end where we validate the input or there is no database, we just expect you to use the submit button to redirect to a page where you can access every form from that page. So when we get to course 2 and we begin to validate this input, then we can say, based on the login of the user, it should redirect the user to another page where they can retrieve a particular client's information. But right now, all you need to do is to use your login button to get to a page. So let's call that page a general client page where you have all the forms to be filled. So there is no form of validation going on there. So you should have a top navigation with the home and logout link at the right end of the page. The first form on the navigation should be a personal information form, and this form should be able to retrieve all of the registration details that were collected when the client was registered. So you want to create the form so that it is editable. This information is just for you to know what the backend designer is going to do, but you just have to create the form. Take notes that it's going to be editable, which means that you want to leave the value attributes and put it equal to an empty string. So if you go back to previous lessons, especially lessons of part 2, you will see how you can do this. You can watch from week 7 and 8 to really understand how to create your forms again. So the recommended weeks to watch: week 8, week 10, so 7, 8 and 10, and then you'll be able to understand how to do this. Try as much as possible to do designs incorporating all of the rules that you read in the accessibility rules. Make sure your colors are not conflicted. Do something very simple. So we are going to do a design. I'm going to show you what I did. I really do not want to do this assignment for you because I want you to be able to think like a developer now. As you're going to the end of the course, you should be able to make decisions and reason critically. And I also want you to be able to apply this critical thinking to your final project, which is the project that will be published on the site, where you can actually refer to in your CV as work done, for employers to be able to see your skills, that you can actually make good and responsive and accessible design. So we are going to look at this. I have created a directory folder called the class project. Now take note that we are going to be using this assignment till the end of the course, and we are going to apply all the rules and make it a working project by week 21. Here I have a CSS folder and a pages folder. In my root directory, I have the index page. In the pages folder, I have created all of the forms that we need. The form for congenital syphilis, the form for hepatitis B, the form for personal information, for registration form, the risk factor form, and the STI form. Let's look at the CSS folder. I have a styles.css file. Now, if you refer back to assignment 9 walkthrough, or you go back to watch week 10 lessons, you will see how we created this responsive style sheet, where we first of all apply the box sizing property with the value of border box to all elements of the page. For this, I use the grid view method, so which means I'm dividing the page into rows and columns, having a total of 12 rows with a total width of 100%. So you can go back to watch those videos to be able to understand if you want to use the grid view. You can use the flex, you can use, but just make sure whatever you use, you apply responsiveness and you use it correctly. So because I'm doing mobile first design, I made sure that I have this style, collapsing all of the width of every column to 100% so that we can stack them on themselves rather than shrink them for mobile. And if it checks the screen width and this is a large screen, then you should apply the column width like this. So these are the styles that I put here. So I have made style for the top navigation exactly how we have designed it in assignment 9 walkthrough. You can watch that to see how we created the top nav style. I have created a style for the another list that I will use to put the navigation link and set it to none, the list style type to none, to remove the bullet. I have made the display to be inline for the list item tag so that the top navigation will have everything inline. I have also floated the anchor tag to the right because he said we want it at the top right of the page. So that is for the top navigation, and these are the styles for it. We did this in assignment 9 walkthrough. Now for the section, because I have a top navigation, I position this relative and I put a top of 120 pixels. Now, because this is 100 pixels for the top nav, so I wanted the section to be relative to this, and I want it to start from 120 so there will be space and the section element is not going to hide behind the navigation. So I created style for the article section because I'm going to use that, and for the H3 and H5 because I was thinking all of my headings will be either in H3 or H5 and I want them centered. You mustn't do it exactly like this, but I'm giving you a head start on what you can do. There are several ways you can design your page, but at this point I expect to see good designs to make me proud that all the while you can incorporate everything you've learned from week 1. So take note that you are going to use the knowledge you've had from CSS from week 1, HTML layout from week 6 tables. You need the tables to be able to design this form. Some of the form have a tabular structure. So I've had all of these styles. I've created style for the navigation within the section, which is going to be the side nav. So you might not create this style until you have laid out your page. So let's go to the index page. I'm going to go to my web page and show you what the index page looks like. So this is the index page. Because I've applied the style, you can see this line. On the index page, I have a header, and within this header, I put a navigation here with a class of top nav because I wanted a top navigation bar there that keeps the user on the home page. So subsequently, we are going to have things like maybe about or contact or whatever it is that we want to put at the top navigation. But for now, I just left it as home, and this href is not going to link anywhere. Now, I have a section here, and within the section, I put article. So which means that I want to create this style within the article. I want to create a form within the article. So it says that the index page should have a login form. So I'll say form method. Now because it's login credential, the method has to be post because we are sending sensitive information. The action, let's say when we post, this should just link to the personal information.html. So I have this in the pages folder. So my file referencing, will be pages/personalinfo.html, and I want to say autocomplete should be off. Then I'll close my form. So while you use the HTML layout element, you mustn't do it exactly the way I'm doing it. It says you should have a login form. So remember, we are building for accessibility, and you have to remember disabilities. And so we're going to use the label for, let's say, email, and then I'll write email address and I'll close label, and then I'll put the input. The type is what? Text, and the name here is email. So let's make the type email because this email address, that will be the username for the user. And then I'll put self close here. Then I want also a label for password. So I'll say label for pass, and I'll put password, close label, and then I'll put the input type to be password. I'll make the name password. So give them meaningful names so that when you're doing the back end, you can process this by referring to the name. Another thing again is, after we use the label for, we have to remember to use the ID. So this ID can serve two purposes. When we use JavaScript, we can call on the ID, and also it binds the inputs to the label. So the ID must be equal to the value of the 4 attributes from the label, like this. So refer back to week 7 lessons if you have forgotten how to do this. So the ID here is equal to pass. So when I refresh my page, we'll have this form, no style applied, no button. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll put a submit button. So for now, let's use a break tag to just separate them, and I'll use 2 break tags there. Then we're going to style this form. So make sure your submission is properly styled. Do not use any framework like Bootstrap. You have to use the CSS. So the whole goal of this course is to build innovators, not people who are framework dependent, people who can think outside the box, and people who are able to go beyond the scope of a framework. So we'll save this. I'm going to create, let's say, a button. Input type is equal to, we want it to be a submit button. The name is equal to, let's give it a name of submit, and then the value is equal to login, like this. Save this. Refresh. We have that on the page like this. We want to make this look beautiful, so I can decide to go to my CSS to create a style, and I'll call this style, let's say, form login. And what I want to do now is to set the margin to auto. I want to set the width to, let's say, 50 pixels, or let's say 500 pixels. I also want to do something with the input fields. Let's say, so let's leave it at this. I'll save this, and then I'm going to add it to my index page. So I'm going to put the style here to be class is equal to form login. Save this, refresh my page. I should have it a little better, like this. I want to put a margin for the containers, or let's say padding. Save, refresh, and we'll have it better. So now you know what the login form usually looks like. You can continue to adjust this to be beautiful, but there are better ways to style this where you apply styles that are more responsive than what I'm doing. But this, I do not want to do this assignment for you, but I'm trying to show you how you can create this page. Now we want to do something like, let's say, after the button, I'll put a break tag or 2 break tags like this. So you can do the attribute selector style to style your input field, how they look, the size, how they are placed on the page. So let's say something like forgot your password. So I'll use the anchor tag, href, it links nowhere for now, and then I'll write click here, and then close anchor tag. Save this, refresh, we have that there. So you have put a login on the page. Now because I have said this button, the action page should be personal information, when I click on the login button, it should just take me to the personal information page. Now when we go to the personal information page, here I have created the page. I have linked to the style sheet, so make sure your file referencing is correct. I have created the top nav style here with the nav elements, so make sure that you are using the proper HTML elements. And then I have a section here that has another nav element, and this one is going to be the side nav. And for this, I have created the nav and the article, but I have not positioned them on the page. So let's say I want to have a class here of call 3, and I want to have a class here of call 9. Save this, refresh, we have this positioned like this. So now you can see that there is a side navigation and there is a container here to hold the forms. So we'll just build the rest of the things we want to do in the form here. Your style can be absolutely different from this. I did not show you how I created the style because I want you to create your own style. Now we are on the personal information page. Let's say we want to have the register new client button somewhere at the left here, since the question said we should have the logout and the home here on the right end of the page. So you see how we created that here. And so let's say I want to have a personal information or registration, sorry. So this is going to be register.html, and this will go to register new client. Now this will have a style attribute of float left like this. So when I save this and I refresh, I will have it register new client here. Then I have my requirements here. So every time I want to register and I click here, it goes to the register page. So there is no register.html file here, but we have a registration.html. So I'll change this to registration.html like this, refresh, and we have this there. So when I click on this, it goes there. This is already set up based on the style that I have created. So I set some of this up before the class because I do not want to set this up for you to use exactly what I'm using. I want you to use your imagination and do something different, but this should give you a head start. So while we are there, we can go to home. You can always log in. You can go to the big case report form. You will see this. We can go to that form and begin to set everything up. So let's start from the first one, congenital syphilis. We have this style here. So we're going to put class equal to call3, and for here we're going to put class equal to call9. So it's 12, and then you build your forms within there. So by the time we go to the congenital syphilis, we have that there. I'll do that for help B. I'll put here class is equal to call3, and then class is equal to call9. Save, refresh, and I'll go to the help B. We have it there. So we have for risk factors too. I'll do that. You can use anything. You can say call 4 and call 8, whatever you want, but just make sure the total is equal to 12. The total number of columns is equal to 12, like this. So when I save this, we'll see that this is going to be a little different. So class here is equal to call 4, refresh, and then we'll see it that this takes a little more space than the others. So when I go to personal information, I have it aligned, help B aligned, risk factor aligned, help B aligned. I have congenital syphilis aligned, and I've tried designing this form here. So you can see that the one for the gonorrhea, I started designing the form, and I'm going to show you how this helps you in your form design. So you see it looks a little more presentable. Avoid the use of unnecessary colors on your page. If you have colors, make sure it is something that doesn't conflict, something that a user can read. Make sure there's no use of too many colors because you want to make it beautiful. At the end of the day, you score 0 on your design. So you want to make it as simple, as readable, and as attractive as possible. Now this is not the best design. This is just a sketch of a design. So when we look at the congenital syphilis form, or for the gonorrhea form, for instance, if you look at this form critically, you'll see that this can take a table structure for designing, and then you have a text here. So what did I do on this form? Let's go to the form. After creating the layout, I started creating the form within the article section with a call of 8. I use a table for the first part, which is this part here. It asks to have the dates. So these are clinic information, the dates, the health provider, the person completing the form, the contact of the number, and then it has this text after that. So I'm going to use multiple tables to make this form look a little alike or a little better. What I did was to start a table. I did not apply any style to the table. You can style your table to have the heading in gray, just like it is on the original form, but you can change your style, design it, make it presentable. So we have the dates and the person completing the form here. I wanted to do something close that these are on the same row, and I did that here to make sure I created a row, put the dates, the person completing the form. So this is how you can use table within a form. So what I did not do here was to start with the form tag. So you put your form here, and the method here is going to be post, and then we'll put the action here, and you leave the action blank for now because we are not doing that, and then you set autocomplete to off. So by the time we get to course 2, you will see that this structure is going to change so that when the user logs in, the user doesn't just come to a page like this. The user will have to retrieve a client by their unique ID, and then when the form populates, it's going to have the past records that were filled for these clients and fresh new forms, encounter forms where you can fill new information for the same client. So any information you fill on the form at that point is going to be for the client whose unique ID you entered to retrieve the information. And so we have this like this, and then we close the table, and then I use a P tag, made it bold and with italic to put the text within here there. Then I can continue now with patient information. So what I can do next is to continue here, put a heading, let's say H3, or we can use a caption for a table and put patient information, close H3. Then I'll start my table. So now recall that I've done the form. I'm going to be closing my form at the end of before the end of the article like this, because my form started at the beginning, and I'm going to close table so I don't forget. And so I'm going to look at the form again, and I'm going to see name, date of birth, gender are all on one row. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to create table row and close table row. Within this row, I have a heading, and the heading here says name. Now, when we get to course 2, you're not going to enter a name for a client that you have retrieved, because you want this to auto-populate from the database, and so we are going to do that in another course. And so here you're going to put an input field to be able to retrieve the name in the input box or update the name in the event that there is an error previously. So type is going to be text, name is going to be, let's say name is full name, and then we have close TD. The next thing we have here is TH is the heading, and we have the date of birth, close TH, and then TD is going to be input, the type of date, the name is going to be DOB, and then close TD. Then we'll have the third one, which is the gender, close TH, TD, input type equal to radio, name equal to gender. So put value is equal to, so this will be for male, close TD. Now take note of what I'm doing here. You notice I put the input within the table and there is no labels. This is not the best accessibility design, and I'm doing this purposely for you to apply accessibility when you design yours. I don't want to be the one to do this assignment for you. I really want to see the way you think, and I want you to be able to assign or apply the thinking to your final project. And so when I save this, I'll leave this as one option, or let's just create more options here. So we can finish with this row, and then I'll make this female, and I'll make this intersex, and then I'll break each of these to be on a new line. And then I'm done with this row, and then I can start a new row for the next item. So let's refresh here to see what we've done. And so we've done patient's information, name, date of birth, gender. So you're going to build your forms like this, and so you do all of them like that. So remember that in this demonstration, I created a section. My section has two of the elements, the nav for the side nav and the article that holds the forms. So this is how you build your assignment, and we're going to look at what the final project is I'm asking, so that you understand what it is that is required of you for the first deliverable. So for the first deliverable, you have to create an introduction for your final project. You want to write about what the project is. You want to plan the project. What's the purpose? What's the description? For instance, let's say we are building a project for education, for instance. You want to say things like, I'm building an examination portal, or I'm building a school management portal. And you give the outline of the scope of development. This school management only deals with the finance part, or deals with the special education part, or it deals with the admin part of finance and fees and bursaries, things like that. So you want to put the scope of what you are going to be developing, and you define the terms. For instance, if we are doing things about student activities and classrooms, you want to put things like, okay, infraction is an offense committed by students on school grounds. So you want to define those kind of terms that you are going to use that are domain specific to what you are building. Then you want to also describe the forms and the form fields. What forms are you using? Are you going to have 5 forms, 10 forms, 20 forms on the page, on the application? What are the names of these forms? Which fields do they form? What information do each form collect? Let's say, for instance, registration form collects names and dates of birth and contact and address, next of kin and the rest. So you're going to describe these fields. You want to describe dependencies of how each form relates to themselves. For instance, there has to be a registration for there to be a student detail page, things like that. You are going to describe that. And then you are going to have graphical design or mock-ups like the wireframes. This is optional, so if you know how to do those stuff, you can go to Mock Plus to see. It's something you can easily do yourself, where you do graphical design. So for those of you that already know how to use Figma for UI UX design, those are the things you can use them to do graphical design for you to plan your colors, your style, what you want to do. If you have the time, this is an optional step. Then user class and characteristics. You want to say, define the different types of users for the system you are building. If you are building an education site or a school portal, you have different types. You have the teachers, you have the students, you have the admin, you have the parents. How many actors do you have and what are their characteristics? What would they be doing on the site? So you want to list them like that. Then user stories and testing scenarios. Stories gives you how large the scope is and how much time you need. Now remember, you have a very short time to do all of this, less than 4 weeks. So you have to be very careful with the scope of what you are designing. And so the stories is going to tell you your scope. So for instance, the story will be something like, I'm designing a site. A user should be able to log in. A logged in user should be able to do the following. An admin should be able to edit this. A parent should be able to do that. So that is how you build your user stories. Testing scenarios is when you have a form with validation and you want to say, for instance, the registration form has a first name, a last name, a middle name, sex, date of birth. And so you want to make sure that when you are testing, the first name is entered, the middle name is omitted, the last name is entered, the sex is omitted. You want this to produce an error. The form should not be submitted because a required field is not there. So you want to create a table of testing scenarios where you want to say this combination should result in an error, this combination should go okay. So that's where you know that your system is working or your forms or your functionalities are working as they are expected. So we test, but we are not learning testing in this course. You just want to create a testing scenario for you to see what is expected when you do your front-end end user test. Functional requirement is where you state how you place the elements on the page, what layout you are using, the size of elements like the buttons, the pictures, if you have them, drop down the text field. You want to look at the length of the fields, like the max length, the min length. You want to look at your font style, your font size, your font colors, your text colors, your background colors. You want to plan them here, and then you write all of this out, and then you submit a PDF file of all of this. Now this is not final. It's something that after grading you can edit, and then you incorporate all you have edited to now start creating the template in the next deliverable, which is just due less than 2 weeks after you submit the first deliverable. So this is all about the walkthrough. We are going to have more walkthroughs using this class project and guide you towards your final project. So thank you and see you in your lessons.